The thing's not going to be able to sit down when I'm done explaining it. Hi. Host Eric here. Explaining NI, y'all. That's right. Introverted intuition. Hello, Jay.
What's up, dude?
I'm explaining NI to all the people.
Sick. Let's hear it.
All right. So, Margie once said something very memorable. She said, NI has to do with time, understanding intuitively when the right time to do something is. So, that's one way that we can know about NI and NE. Is the NE person, when they start to play music, will be sloppy on the time and better on the melodies. And then later on, they will learn how to master the time part. Vice versa for the NI user, who will start off with a good sense of how it has to lock into the pocket rhythmically and will grow to understand the complexities of the melodic construction and such as they develop. That's one thought about NI. Here are some analogies I've used to describe NI before. The two kinds of hunter. The NE hunter says, oh, we need to get some dinner by hunting in the forest. He straps on this weapon. He straps on the rocket-propelled grenade launcher. He gets in his multi-armored vehicle and blasts up the radio 100 times 100. Rolls into the forest, says, die, motherfuckers! Fucking drives all around the forest, shooting everything he could possibly see in sight. Then when he's done, he's like, look at all this dead shit I got here. Ah! And then the other person says, well, only like 3 of those things can we eat. And the 2 of the things that we could eat, you blew to smithereens, so we can't eat them anymore. So that I guess that leaves that one dead pheasant there that we can eat. In contrast, the NI hunter enters the forest very quietly with a single spear with a razor sharp point that has been spent a lot of time sharpening it back in the shed and sits in a perfect hiding place and waits and waits and waits until that pheasant lands right in front of that hiding place, goes to peck some seeds that NI has put down there to attract the pheasant, and then NI slides the spear directly through the artery in the neck of the pheasant, killing it instantly and draining it all of its blood at the same time. Yeah, that's how the two.
What did they miss?
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
So what you're saying is NE is very inefficient. And NI is ultimately efficient.
Well, NE is inefficient, except NE is necessary because NE is how we learn that actually that thing over there is delicious. Right? We didn't like imagine the time before we understood that cows were delicious, right? So nobody in India ever said, "Hey, maybe those cows are delicious." That's why they let them walk around the street and don't eat beef. Now, in contrast, some extroverted intuitor long ago in the Western world said, hey, let's try eating those cows over there. And they found out that they were delicious, and that's how we know how to eat cows now. Same thing with lots of things. If you didn't, you know how people say, oh, I get my good ideas musically by when I make mistakes. And then I stumble on something cool when I made a mistake. Well, that is probably an NI user who is relying on natural chaos to generate some new ideas and stuff and capitalize on them to utilize NE in ways that we as NE DOMs don't really use it. For me, if you said, well, come up with 6 different phrasings of these 3 notes, I could do it no problem. I come up with 50 different phrasings. I come up with 100 different phrasings. It wouldn't be an issue at all, you know? That's going to be different for an NI user who's going to find it easier to come up with one phrasing they find perfect than it is to come up with 30 bad phrasings. So um, it's a different way of looking at the universe, because the reason that we're the ones who open up new ground and discover things that aren't intuitively obvious at first, or necessarily right or true at first, but that turn out to be right or true as we experience them a little bit more and get to know them more familiarly. And we may not be the ones who recognize our good ideas as good ideas. Maybe somebody else who recognizes them before we do, unless we get in the habit of trying to do that. And then when we do get in the habit of trying to do that, that's called handling introverted intuition. The reason we have trouble developing it in general is because we start with possibilities and then we vet those possibilities with TI. We check them for logical consistency. But that's not the same thing as NI. NI is something that's the opposite of TI, in the sense that you know the truth or value of something, more the truth of it, without any verification. It's faith, basically. And it's not something that comes naturally to an NETI user who has faith that there are always more possibilities out there, but doesn't think of that as being faith. It's just obviously how things are, you know? So, does that help explain NE a little bit? I can come up with more stuff in a second. Let me just sit here. Like I said, I'm confident I can always come up with more stuff to say about stuff.
Yeah. I just
So,
think that can be utilized in so many different ways.
so NI doesn't require a logical framework to have the truth, or to feel the truth or something. I'm not sure exactly how to say that.
It's like the existence of the logical framework is one of the set and finalized objects that NI takes into consideration when producing its obvious conclusions. In other words, it does play a role, but the role is not. You don't have to work through it at all. It's just sort of, well,
That's the
NI
nature of.
yeah, NI knows enough about logic that it won't ever produce something that's completely illogical, right? But it doesn't actually work through the details of it.
Intuiting, I think, just the nature of that word helps, like subjective intuiting.
Right.
You're having an INTJ brother and NI Dom. I've been able to kind of see how that works a little bit through him.
Well, think
He
about it
has
this
much
way.
less playing with stuff than me. Ideas.
Well,
That's a good way.
More focused and linear, and but he'll feel something. He'll jump past the knowledge gap of evidence easier than I will, because it's an intuition thing that's happening within. So yeah. He's an INTJ.
The interesting thing, you could think about introverted intuition regarding extroverted feeling matters in the INTJ. So you might say, well, how do you know that he was being sarcastic? Well, because of the way he said it. Well, what do you mean exactly? And then you kind of think about it. You could probably describe it and say, well, it's because when the voice goes like this, and you describe the process. But really, the way you know he's being sarcastic is because it's habituated as necessarily so. If I say something like, "Oh, nice hat," in that tone, that tone is meant to be taken as sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't actually mean you have a nice hat. So, a INTJ presumably might, if they were to make mistakes in extroverted feeling, it's because their introverted intuition has rendered those other people's emotional states as finalized objects that aren't subject to ongoing process-driven refinement. And so if the INTJ has identified that person as a sarcastic person and made a point of noting that they should expect sarcasm from them, and develop certain cues they can reference, then that's one thing. But if somebody's behaving uncharacteristically, then they're very unlikely to pick up on the FE cues because their introverted intuition isn't operative on a process level for that function. It's operative on a rendered final product functionality.
Okay. Okay.
Margie says NI equals axiom and TI equals theorem. Just to read something in the chat real quick. Margie says, I like to think of NI equals axiom and TI equals theorem. Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting distinction.
I don't know what those words mean, but that's cool.
Well, axiom means an underlying rule or assumes truth upon which the rest of a model is built. So if
Okay.
like addition is commutative or whatever it is, that property that means it doesn't matter what order it goes in, 2 plus 1 is the same as 1 plus 2, whatever property that is, that's like an axiom for math.
Okay, got it.
And then a theorem is like well, it's like a proposed meta-axiom or something like that.
Okay, I understand. So basically, INTJ or an NI-DOM is going to sort of do quick analysis and basically operate. Their perception is going to become somewhat concrete much more quickly than an E user.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, they do tend to render opinions about people that don't change a lot. So
yeah, I've seen that. I guess that's sort of why I've talked with a lot about that. I've just kind of seen that.
Oh.
He'll get a vibe of somebody, and whatever that vibe is, that's how it's going to be determined from that point on. It's not really subject to alteration very much after that.
it's one of the ways that the ENTP might conflict with INFJ or INTJ is our basic position is, okay, I get the fact that you're saying this probably isn't going to work because of X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
But that assumes that I'm not going to change the plan midway. And see, NI-DOMs don't really like that because it kind of messes up their whole thing, you know? It messes up their program a bit if you say, here's what I'm going to do based on these things. And they go, yeah, but these things are wrong. And you go, well, I'll just change those things then.
Yeah.
And they don't,
Yeah.
then they say, well, you don't even have a plan then. You go, well, it's not a plan per se. It's a suggested course of action.
They don't play with stuff like we do.
Right. They don't like the fact that we're going to tell them that we should do something and it's going to work out well, but we can't really explain why it's going to work out well. And then when we can't explain it or they bring up reasonable objections, we say, yeah, well, we'll just adjust on the fly. And they go, yeah, but
Yeah.
but that's not fair. You can't make that argument. They don't really say that, but they should say that. And you go, well, I know I can't make that argument maybe, but that's how it is, yo. I don't know what to tell you. So that's a point of potential conflict between NIs and NEs.
Interesting. Okay, that helps a lot.
And that concludes this video. Thank you, Jay, for cueing me to end it right there.